All right. Welcome, John Hewitt, to the Self-Employment Success Podcast.
Thank you, Leland.
I'm excited to have you on today. I think your story is incredibly impressive and one that comes with deep impact and profound success. And so I'm excited for the listeners to be able to get some slivers of wisdom and to just hear from you today. So kick us off. Tell us a little bit about you and kind of what you're up to these days. We'll jump into kind of how you got to where you are, but tell us a little bit about yourself and where you are and where your business is today.
We're we're in an umbrella company that has 10 different franchise systems. So we're looking to bring in franchisees into things like house inspections, roofing, dog grooming, taxes, accounting. We're here to help people find what they want to be and seize their dream.
Amazing. So you own a company that kind of helps match franchisors with franchisees. Is that correct?
We own the franchisors, and we're
Okay.
looking to attract franchisees.
Okay. Awesome. So you own you own the businesses that you're franchising as well. It's not like if
Exactly.
I have a company, I can come to you and you'll consult on that. Wonderful.
Exactly.
Um, so tell us a little bit about and just so listeners know, that company is called Loyalty Brands. And that's John's newest passion project and business that he's building currently. But John, tell us your story. I got the privilege of a quick recap before we hit record, but I'd love for you to tell the listeners kind of your history, what brought you to this point today.
Sure. One of the many, many blessings in my life is I found out what I wanted to do when I was 20 years old. Most people, I've interviewed thousands of people and asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up? I always ask that. And most people don't know, even that, whether they're 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, they don't know what they want to be when they grow up. And
Mm,
so I was blessed when I was a student at the University of Buffalo to take an H&R Block course. And I loved it. And I started working evenings and weekends for H&R Block tax, doing taxes. And 12 years later, I was running 250 H&R Block locations. My dad, who had always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I was born when he was at Michigan State, and he had so many children so quickly, he could never afford to go on his own. So he decided that this was the time that he had bought one of the first Apple computers by mail, long before there was an Apple store. There weren't even 100,000 Apple computers in the country. And he liked it better than the mainframe that was running his public company. He was CFO of a public company. So he convinced me to leave H&R Block. And so he quit his job as CFO, and I quit my job. And in 1981, we built the first tax software for an Apple computer. You're not old enough to remember a world without computers, but it scared people. People were afraid of computers,
mm,
and no one wanted it. In fact, we were so visionary. H&R Block, who was our biggest competitor, had 9,000 locations. They said in an annual report the year after that, they said, people ask us why we don't computerize. We say, why should we? It doesn't save us any money. Customers don't care. We're never going to computerize. So we got a second blessing. I found a company here in Virginia Beach called Mel Jackson Tax Service. And we bought Mel Jackson Tax Service from his widow, 6 offices. And the biggest blessing in that was that the weather here is so much nicer than Buffalo. So in 1982, I moved my family down here to run Mel Jackson Tax Service with our computer system, and been here ever since. The Within a few years, we changed the name to Jackson Hewitt. We merged the computer company and the tax company, and we began to franchise. We went public, and 15 years later, we sold it for $483 million. So
mm,
almost a $500 million. I had a non compete that lasted 3 years. and but it didn't cover Canada because Jackson Hewitt hadn't yet gone to Canada. Having grown up in Buffalo and done tax returns there, I had done Canadian tax returns, and I knew the Canadian tax system and how well H&R Block did in Canada. So we opened our next tax service called Liberty Tax Service in Canada, and within 3 years, built a top 100 retail franchise chain in Canada. So now I built the top 100 in the US and a top 100 firm in Canada. And Jackson Hewitt has 6,000 offices, still the 23rd largest franchise chain in the country, went on to be $1 billion company. So I founded $1 billion company. Now I had to compete against that company. I had to compete against my own name and my own software and my own system. And yet, not only did Liberty Tax US uh, uh, beat up and grow faster than Jackson Hewitt, we grew faster than Jackson Hewitt and H&R Block combined. We opened 4,000 offices in 12 years, top 10 fastest growing franchisor ever. So now I had founded two chains, one of 6,000, one of 4,000. Again, this chain was worth $500 million, and it was public. Sold my stock again, and then that's when I started Loyalty Brands, and so that was 5 years ago. We have two are by far the two fastest growing brands at Loyalty Brands are A-Tax. I'm a 54-year tax expert. I call myself the great granddaddy of tax preparation, and I am a great granddaddy in person. So I had just had my third one, and almost my fourth one will be here in February. But so our tax is doing well. But surprisingly, it surprised me. Pets have totally surprised me. The whole industry is just exploding, and our mobile grooming is growing even faster than our tax division. So that's where we are today. We have as I said, we have 10 companies franchising. It's the old 20-80-20 rule, where 20% of them are doing fantastic and the other are growing, but not nearly as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there's so much to unpack there. And it's exciting. Like, I love hearing your story because you are John Hewitt of Jackson and Hewitt Taxes, which is every town has a Jackson Hewitt. Every town has a Liberty Tax. You're the founder of two of the largest franchises in the world, and where probably many of our listeners have their taxes done, or at least know someone. Everyone knows someone who has used Jackson Hewitt or Liberty Tax. So that's just, like, in and of itself, truly impressive. But then you break down the fact that you came back to the United States and had to compete with your own company that's using the own software you created and has your name on the door. You're competing with Jackson and Hewitt with Liberty Tax, and you beat yourself. You then created Liberty Tax and grew it to be even bigger. That is truly amazing. Truly like a remarkable story. Like, what do you think in those days? Like, we're coming back to the United States. I've built this one business. Now I'm competing with it. What were some of the things you did to say, hey, like, we're going to really grow Liberty Tax? We're going to, for any of these franchises, I guess, but I just think the Liberty Tax piece is so interesting because you're competing against yourself, your former self, which you could break that thought down into how often we're competing with ourselves internally. We're our own biggest critic. You are actually competing with yourself. So what were some of the things you did that was different to be able to really achieve that level of success?
Well, first of all, let me say this, that I started Jackson Hewitt when I was about your age. I was 33 years old, and 15 years later, I sold it. And I have to say this: if you run a business from a $129,000 investment in 1982 to $483 million, and with thousands of locations worth $500 million. If you haven't learned a lot, you're an idiot, right? I mean, if you get to start all over again, then you got to be way better than you were when you started your first company. And I've learned so
Mm.
many lessons. So I took many of the lessons learned at Jackson Hewitt, and there were a lot of little things. I mean, there's just hundreds of things I learned in those 15 years, right, that made me start quicker. But one of them, the biggest one, was this: that the second biggest mistake I ever made at Jackson Hewitt was when we bought the 6 Mel Jackson offices in August of 1982. H&R Block had 9,000 locations. And so we naively or stupidly or crazily set a goal to have 9,000 offices, to have 9,001 office. So we had 6 and they had 9,000. So we were set a goal. We're going to be number one with 9,000 offices. Well, Jackson Hewitt only ended up getting to 6,000, but that was a massive billion-dollar company, great success. But I started out, and by the first January, from August to January, we added 5 offices. So now we were at 11. The second January, we added 4 more offices, and now we're at 15. The third January, we added 7 more offices, and now we're at 22. So in 2.5 years, we had grown from 6 offices to 22 offices. Almost anyone will be very happy with that kind of growth from
Yeah.
6 to 22. But I realized since our goal was 9,000, that I was going to be 1,000 years old by the time we got to 9,000. And so something had to change. And so we immediately embarked on franchising. And franchising is a wonderful system where you create opportunities for wannabe entrepreneurs to be all that they can be. They can make money, and actually, you get great people to pay you to work for you. So
Mm.
when you acquire a franchise, you pay money, right? And then you pay an ongoing royalty. So I brought in over 5,200 franchisees in my career. People pay me, quality people pay me to work for me. And so our growth went crazy. We went from 22 offices to 49 offices to 200 offices to 400 offices. And we began to see the growth that we had envisioned by just franchising. So I waited 2.5 years when I started and bought Mel Jackson to franchise. When I started Liberty, day one, we were franchised. And
Mm.
so that was the one significant change that made a huge difference in growth. But there's many, many things. There's dozens of things and hundreds of things that we did better.
Oh, I'm sure. And I'm curious for any listeners who are considering, like, do I buy a franchise or do I franchise my business? For things like Liberty Tax, like if you, or, Jackson Hewitt, either one, when you are franchising your business, how do you control quality across the board? Like if you have all these people coming in paying you, is there a vetting process? I mean, like you think when you think franchise, I immediately go towards the like restaurant franchises. And like if I go into McDonald's, I'm going to get the same quality every time. Like it is a consistency across the board. But how do you build that? Like, how do you scale? Because the idea of someone's going to pay me to work for me and run a branch for me, and I get a royalty on all their production, I'm like, obviously that sounds incredible. But then how do you make sure that it's successful when there's such a large volume?
Uh, The That's very important, extremely important, because whoever offers the least service, the worst service in the country, determines the brand name and
Mm.
that you get with consumers. So you have to maintain a high level. You have to police the system and make sure people are offering great service. and you have to have the methods to eliminate anyone who's not. And it comes down to the word system is the key word. My job as a franchisor is to create a system of doing business that is best in the world. Your job as a franchisee is to follow that system.
Mm,
And so we are constantly challenging people from the day we meet them, they first inquire, until they leave our system, to follow the system. And are you someone that's going to listen and follow the system? And believe it or not, that's the toughest thing to do. In
mm,
the 5,200 franchisees I brought in my career, not one has followed the system 100%. So the people that become millionaires, they listen 98 or 99%. But I've created 1,000 millionaires, but I've also had 1,000 people go out of business. And the people that went out of business listen less than 90%.
mm,
So what we do, one thing unusual in our brands that it's not only best in our industries, but it's best in class in the United States and Canada. And that is, we call our customers and ask them how we did.
mm,
Virtually every brand does surveys, right? They survey. You may survey your listeners, but every brand, you would get an email survey or a card survey or something to fill out. But we go one step further. We call the customers, and what we learn is that it costs a little money. It doesn't cost much. It costs less than 30 cents a customer, but we learned that the customers like to be quizzed. They like to be talked to.
mm,
And so it improved our retention rate. Just the improvement in retention rate paid for the cost. Then what I also learned, Leland, in my career, and especially in tax, but this is true in all of our brands, if not all of our brands, is our employees of the franchisees who are doing the tax returns aren't good at asking for referrals. They're
mm,
not comfortable with asking for referrals, and they're not they don't get rewarded enough for personal reward to ask for a referral. So we have a very personable person call you, say, "How did we do for you?" 95% plus say, "Great, it was wonderful," and that person asks for a referral. So now our referrals increase. So we have an increase in retention, increase in referrals, and not every employee is a great employee.
mm,
You're gonna find employees that are gonna need to be replaced, and you're gonna find superstar employees, average employees, and inadequate employees. And so, do you want to wait? If you have a tax business, do you want to know on January 15th if you have a good employee, or on April 15th? You
mm,
want to know as soon as you can early in the season. So it allows us to go to underperforming employees and either retrain them, give them more guidance or mentorship, or remove them. And you can give your customers the best tax preparer or the worst, or a mediocre tax preparer, the worst. So it's sort of like in professional sports. Who's the first team? Who takes the floor or who takes the field when the game starts? Right?
mm,
And or in the ice when hockey, who's the first team? And so you have your first team, your second string, your third string, and your first team gets more time. And so it's just an incredible way of monitoring the system and making sure that we're exceeding customers' expectations. And it also improves our retention and referrals.
So one of the things you talked about when we were pre-recording is the the impact you've had. You mentioned like I've had the blessing of impacting thousands of lives for the better. And I think that that's a huge piece of self-employment. I think there's a huge piece of entrepreneurship that wants that. Where people that naturally are activators that want to get going, that want to have and leave a bigger impact than we can when we're confined to a 9 to 5 desk situation. So for you, what has that impact looked like in your life? Like what's been the biggest piece of that pie for you?
It's the result is a amazing loyalty that I have from thousands of people. And even today at Loyalty Brands, the reason we call it Loyalty Brands is one of my franchisees at Liberty Tax came to me just before we started Loyalty Brands and said, you know what, you need to start a company that just has people loyal to you because not everyone is loyal, and there can be difficulties and rebellion and disagreements. And so he invented the name loyalty. And then I like the brand loyalty. So I changed it to, you can't use brand loyalty. So I changed it to loyalty brands. And so he provided a loyalty piece. But even at loyalty, I have three people that have been with me 35 years, two
Mm,
30, uh, about five that are 25 years, five that are over 20 years. I have a lot of people loyal to me. And I brought in 5,000 franchises, and they've had over hundreds of thousands of employees. So there are people all over the country that are appreciative of the not only the fact that I set up an organization where they could prosper, and be all that they can be, set up a system that was industry standard and was differentiating enough that we were number one in growth in each year, but that I mentored them, that when they have
mm,
questions, or I'm a very hands-on CEO. Tomorrow I'll be in Dallas and I'll be meeting with existing franchisees, past and franchisees, and potential franchisees. And the thing that I'm obsessive about helping people, and so I'm obsessive about giving advice
mm.
and changing changing people's lives. So if I meet you, be giving you quizzes. As for example, here's one of my quizzes. Can I give you a quiz now? You probably
Hit me
don't
with it.
get quiz. Okay,
Hit me with
you
it.
don't probably don't get quizzed, right? So here's a quiz. One of my favorite quizzes is pretend that there's two groups. There are, and you were at a restaurant last night. I said, well, pretend that that table was the executives from Kmart, the top 3 or 5 executives from Kmart, and pretend that that table over there was the top 3 to 5 executives from Walmart. I said, what's the difference? I mean, are obviously Walmart is incredibly successful and Kmart is going bankrupt, and they've been going bankrupt for a decade. But uh, what's the difference? Are the Walmart people the smartest? Are they the most experienced? Are they most educated? And I learned long ago that no, they're not the smartest or the most educated or the most experienced. If you could buy the smartest or the most experienced or the
Mm.
most so what is the difference between those executives, those people? So that's my quiz to you. What's the difference between the Walmart executives and the Kmart in themselves, not the way not in what type of people are they that are different?
Gosh, my honest answer is I don't know.
Exactly.
I'm sure there's not much different. I'm sure there's probably differences in the decisions they made along the way, but like as far as like quality of person, I don't know. I mean, they're all
It's it comes down to this. It comes down to culture,
mm,
the culture and the attitude. And an important part of the culture is attitude. In Tom Watson Sr., early early CEO of IBM, 100 years ago, said, "I'll give me 100 great engineers, skilled engineers, and give me 100 people that don't know engineering that have great attitudes. I'll take the people with great attitudes because you can teach engineering, you can't teach attitude." In Leland, I've had thousands of employees, and I made the mistake 100 times of trying to change someone's attitude. And you know
mm,
what? I've never been able to change someone's attitude. I've always been able to teach them skills, but never been able to teach their attitude. So at Walmart, there's a culture of performance and positive attitude.
Mm,
And that sets them apart from Kmart. It's that simple. And in when you're a company, you have a balance sheet, and on your balance sheet you have cash, and you have equipment, and you have notes and other assets. Well, there should be a asset that's called culture, because culture sets the difference. The greatest companies have the greatest culture.
mm, I love that. And I think that's so profound. And even in my field, which is different, there's it is true. It's like I can teach you the skills of finance. Like I can teach you the knowledge, the systems, but I can't teach you character. I can't teach you personality, attitude, like relationship. I can't teach you that. That's something that's going to be ingrained but that's important to who I bring on as we craft a brand and a culture like you said. So John, I'm curious um what has surprised you the most? Like you've had such an incredible journey and it continues to be incredible as you're building loyalty brands. What surprised you the most about your journey of self-employment?
Well, I've had a lot of surprises along the way. And because every the easiest way to learn is by making a mistake.
Mm,
So I guess if I had to be surprised, it'd be how many mistakes I've made. They say that the people that are most successful have made the most mistakes. So that means I'm incredibly successful. So I've made incredible amount of mistakes.
mm,
So, but it surprises me how easy it is to get it right, and how so many people get it wrong. And um, Charlie Unger from Berkshire Hathaway just died, and my favorite quote from him was, "If people weren't wrong, uh, if people weren't wrong so often, we wouldn't be so rich."
mm,
So people make so many mistakes, but the secret of franchising, for example, and franchising, you said people want a franchise, and it seems like every mom and pop that has a successful business is thinking about growing and franchising and building their brand. And in franchising, the secret of success is incredibly easy. One, I'll tell you in a minute, it's just a very short phrase, right? And yet most franchisors fail. In this country, there are 4,000 franchisors. And I'll give you another quiz. To be in the top 50% of all franchisors in the country. Remember, I'm here to help you and change you, right?
yeah,
To
I
make you
love it.
better. So here's the quiz: 4,000 franchisors in the United States. To be in the top 50% of all franchisors, and that there's great franchisors like Liberty Tax and Jackson Hewitt and Zoom and Grimman and H&R Block and Subway. And to be in the top 50%, how many locations do you need to have?
Oh gosh, 1,000?
Remember, I told you most fail. 20.
You just need to have
Most
20?
half the franchisors, 2,000, have 20 or less. Most franchisors fail, and they fail for one simple thing they don't understand, and that's this: happy, successful franchisees.
Mm,
Happy, successful franchisees. It's that simple. If your franchisees are happy and have a good return on investment, you can't stop growing.
mm,
But if they're not happy, and or don't have a good return on investment. So when franchisors build out, they build a system where the franchisor makes money,
mm,
and they don't care. I mean, the franchisees, some franchisees may make money, but by and large, they don't make enough money for return on their investment. So it's that simple. It's black and white. It's easy. I mean, how hard is that to understand, Leland? I mean, you have to be a rocket scientist to understand the phrase "happy, successful franchisee."
when
And
you put it
if
that way,
you
it's very easy.
right, if you call each of the franchisees of a franchisor with less than 20 locations and find out, are they happy and successful? You'll find out they are not. But if you
Mm,
call a brand that has hundreds and thousands of locations, are they happy and successful? Yes, they are.
mm. So what was the low point for you in this journey?
Yeah, God doesn't put anyone here to escape. You always
Mm,
face adversity. And some of the mistakes I made, I almost went bankrupt because of my overexpansion in 1988 at Jackson Hewitt. I almost went bankrupt in 1995 when the IRS had, in 54 years, the IRS had one horrible year where they destroyed the industry by a mistake they made in the long story. Had civil war at my last company in when after a bad year, internal fighting. So
mm,
there's always, in at Liberty Tax, I had the company for 17 years and 18 years. In the first 18 years, the board of directors, unanimous agreement, everyone's happy, we're growing, we're a $500 million company. And then we had one bad year, and a couple of people rebelled
mm,
and caused a civil war. So, and as a public company, it's all over the media. So
mm,
I was eviscerated. But so there's again the if God said to me, you're going to have these troubles, you're going to almost go bankrupt, or even if you're going to go bankrupt, or you're going to lose your company, or and He said, well, I can have a rebellion at your company, or you're going to lose your son. What would you take?
mm,
Take the company, right? So,
mm,
or your son's going to be crippled, or take the company. So I start with a premise: God, family, and business. And
mm,
I'm the most grateful person you'll ever meet. That every day I wake up happy, every day I go to sleep happy. And because of I'm in business, I'm aggravated all day long, but I'm go to sleep happy, and I never have a bad day in the sense that my attitude ever changes. I
mm.
start I start grateful and grateful every day and end grateful every day. I'm in an incredible. I've had a blessed life and um, changed the world and made it a better place.
Gosh, I I have so many thoughts running through my head, but one of them is just like you really have had such a profound impact, and I love your values: God, family, business. Um, in so many ways, I try and model my life the same way. And um, you don't know much of my story, but some of my listeners do. My wife and I had a son who needed open heart surgery and things like that last year, the same time I started my business. And there were so many moments, like you said, where it was like, okay, Lord, take my business, take anything, like I would rather have like a healthy family and have, just keep my priorities in line. So I love that. And you sort of already answered this last question, but to wrap up, as you know, if if you pull anybody on the side of the road and ask them, how do you define success? That word means different things to different people. People will kind of define that differently for what it means to them. So for you, how do you define success? And have you achieved it? And if so, how do you know?
The thing that makes me feel that I've been successful in life is the number of people that are grateful to me.
Mm,
And I can go anywhere in the country and pick up and schedule a dinner, breakfast, lunch with people. As you said, there's a Jackson Hewitt in every town of more than 30,000 people, and there's a Liberty Tax in a town of every more than 30,000 people. And people are grateful to me all the way back to H&R Block that I left 40 years ago. So I have so many people that are appreciate and change their lives, and that is the measurement of my success, is how many lives I've changed, and for the
mm,
better, right? It
mm,
does not about, and it's not about the heights you achieve. It's about obstacles overcome. right?
Mm,
And my favorite story in the Bible is the talent story. And you have to use your talents. And I was standing in
mm,
church 40 years ago, and when you're in church and they're preaching, it's almost like they want everyone to be a minister like themselves. They're just so they called on you to be a minister and give money, and I always felt a little guilty about not about going ahead and having an occupation, right?
mhm,
Just a teeny little thought, not a big thought. And then I was on the finance committee, and I was standing there before church, and I had missed a meeting because I had traveled, and I saw the chairman of the committee, and I said, "I'm sorry, I missed the meeting." He said, "You do what you do best. Just do what you do best," and that was making money and giving a lot of money and changing lives in that way. There's
mm.
different ways to minister to people, right? And
Amen.
one is teaching about God, and the other, but teaching them how to have income and be self-sufficient and feel good about themselves is an important part of life. And so I've ministered to people in a non in every way,
Mm,
but mostly through changing their lives financially and feel good. I mean, think of these thousands of franchisees who had thousands of employees who so they're changing lives.
mhm.
It's pay it forward. So I
And it's
mean,
a trickle down effect.
I can't even imagine the number of people I've impacted with the pay it forward concept.
Mm,
So that's how I feel success is making the world a better place in some way.
I love that. I love that your answer didn't have to do with, once I have a bigger boat or a bigger house or any of that. It's making a lasting impact on people's lives. And it's true, like you've impacted people, just the people in your life, which has been a huge sphere. And then they're impacting other people's lives. And when you look at the scriptures, the whole story is like the Lord saying, like, I want you to be free and whole and full of life. And so often we're slave to money and we're stressed about it. And it's a chain around our neck, as opposed to helping people really use it as a tool to build freedom and to build the life that allows them to say, look at this harvest, And I do think there's a really powerful ministry to be had in caring for people in your unique spheres, whether that's, up on stage at church or it's, you know, just in your office or in your day to day or in your neighborhood, just really caring for the people around you. I think that's really profound. And you've had a really profound impact, which is amazing. Um, well, John, thank you so much. I honestly might need to have you back on here because you're a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and experience. Um, but I just appreciate you giving time, and I'm so grateful for this conversation today. So thank you for being on.
It was my pleasure. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.